Oh, okay. Fabulous. Well, thank you for coming, and for all of you who are tuning in later on the YouTube channel. I wanted to just wish everyone a happy November, and I wanted to say thank you to coming to Christine Moon Music Peace Education interview with wonderful Jan Berger of the Paperhand Puppet Intervention. Jan is an amazing artist, naturalist, activist, helping the world be a better place through his art and his I guess puppet theater company, Paperhand Puppet Intervention, with other co-founder Don Zimmerman, wonderful person as well. And so thank you so much for coming and talking with me this morning, Jan.
Yeah, great to talk to you. It's good to see you again.
I'm trying to send Zoom vibes of gratitude, and I hope that you are receiving them on your end.
Thank you.
You're liking the crispiness of the outside beautiful air on your porch?
Yeah, I like this cool weather, and there's a little bit of sunshine peering through the clouds, and
Yes.
I like lap cat.
Oh, who is that?
Good.
Oh, hello. Oh, sweetness. Well, um, so I uh chatted with Jan Berger after his final show at the Forest Theater in Chapel Hill of this summer's Paperhand Puppet Intervention show. It was absolutely just magnificent, resplendent, and effervescent. And I was so happy that he was able to talk with me. And I said, "Oh, I would love to interview you." So thank you. Um, I feel like you are like a mystic, like humble philosopher king, artist. And anyway, I don't want to make you uncomfortable, so I'll stop. But
It's okay.
speaking of naturalists, let's start with a seed. I would love to know your seed, like where the seeds of your passion for your art and for making the world a better place. Where do you think the seed of all that came from? When was it planted? And could you pinpoint like an experience or a mentor or anything that planted the seed for you? And we can just grow from there. I was
Um,
gonna say I was gonna say go from there, but I said grow from there.
that's it. I like grow instead of go. Uh, I mean, I think for me, it wasn't any one particular thing. I think I inherited it from my parents.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
I grew up in a family that of activists and artists, so that's just kind of who I became.
Wow.
You know, my dad was a mural painter. My mom was a graphic artist doing work for different kinds of alternative press stuff, um, People's Yellow Pages and worker safety and fighting the Vietnam War and that kind of thing. I remember
Yeah.
seeing photos of a geodesic dome that my dad built as part of a protest of the Vietnam War at the Boston Common. Um, I guess when I was just a baby or before I was born. You know, so they were just in that world and that culture of things, and making art was just kind of like part of what we did as a family.
Oh
But
wow.
so I think, you know, the 70s and all of its alternative uh sprouting and all the turmoil and culture changing that was going on there is just sort of like what I inherited. Um and so I feel sort of driven to do that kind of work. And
Hmm.
um being an artist has felt like a good way for me to contribute because it keeps me going. It is sort of soulfully um, able to feed me in ways that I'm not the best at going to meetings and planning things and going
Mhm.
to more meetings. I try, I try to limit that so that I can um,
Mhm.
work on the hands-on sort of soul feeding aspect of making art. But for me, art and activist work is so often tied together. Um, and I have had a lot of mentors over the years, you know,
I'm
act-
taking notes.
artist mentors. You're taking notes.
I take notes because that's how I love remembering things. And so whenever you see me look down, that's just, I just wanted to let you know that's what I'm doing.
Okay. Yeah. Um,
You had mentors.
yeah. I mean, I think that figuring stuff out over the years, like how to do the kind of things that you want to do, is a real job um, for any artist or any activist because there's not like you know, a set kind of company that you sign up for or whatever. Um, but working with Eric Weinberger in Boston doing Food Not Bombs and Homes Not
Mhm.
Jails, and early on learning how to do civil disobedience and get arrested and have that not be like an intimidating uh, hurdle to jump,
Mm.
and getting that inspiration of like, this is something you can do. You could show up and do this thing week after week
Mhm.
um, as a way of contributing. And then working with Sarah Peedy at the Boston Puppeteers Cooperative in the basement of this church near Arlington Street Station. Just being like, oh, this is something you can do. You can make art. And she's been doing parades on the New Year's in Boston for um, probably 40 years or more. No, more than that. 45, 50 years. It's amazing.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and she learned her craft from Bread and Puppet Theater.
Yeah,
Um, I worked with them also.
I saw that when I was reading about you.
Yeah. And then other influences like, and when I lived in San Francisco briefly, I was kind of like, all right, this is San Francisco. There's a lot of cool things happening here. And I would talk to people and say, who do I need to talk to who's doing activist work and art? And they tuned, tuned, turned me on to David Solnit, who
Oh.
had started the Art and Revolution Convergence with others. And so we were doing puppets and banners and art, but as a way of helping different activist causes and kind of highlighting and enlivening them. So working with them and learning from Ruby from uh, Wise Fool Puppet Intervention, who gave, we sort of stole the name Puppet Intervention because I figured there could be another puppet intervention on the East Coast. Sort of like there's Food Not Bombs on all over the country. It's like
Yeah.
we could be a puppet intervention. Um, but just lots of people over the years, and anytime we would get together for giant convergences for some sort of protest or another, like in Seattle or Washington, um,
Mhm.
we would try to get together like a couple weeks in advance and build lots of art and stories together. So um,
Mm.
that was one of the main ways of cross pollination and fertilizing. Um, how to do the kind of work that I do is like people would show up from different parts of the country or different parts of the world and be like, start making some stuff, and you'd watch each other and be like, oh, you do that, or this is how you use your cornstarch goop, or um, this is how you build a a skeleton to make a gigantic puppet, or learning tricks like that and taking mental notes. Um, has given me like a jumping off place. And then working with my partner, Donovan Zimmerman, making
Mm,
making puppets together over the years, we always challenge ourselves to build new ways, try new techniques, learn from people that we meet, and expand our repertoire of how we build, but also invent new technologies because it's a very kind of homegrown art form. The type of puppets we do, it's all sort of people powered, and we want them to be replicable and buildable by folks that we work with. I got into a lot of stuff, but
no, that is so cool. Speaking about a lot of stuff, I feel like I could talk to you about a lot of stuff, but I want to respect your time. So, um, how are you feeling about, I don't know, 10:30 it is the time now. What is a good time for you to, I just want
um,
to respect your time.
I'm pretty easy. I don't have anything that I have to do this morning. I'd like to work on some banners and prototypes for
Yes,
for a workshop that I'm teaching, but it's still not for a couple of weeks, so I'm I'm okay. I'm
maybe
building.
around 11 o'clock we can
Sure,
wrap up.
11
Yeah.
or it can go over to. It's whatever works for what
Oh,
you're looking for.
thank you.
Uh,
And yeah, so yes, I know I need to, because I could go on and on, so I wanted some parameters. But so that is so cool. So the seed was kind of like it was osmosis in just in the environment you grew up. That's a really cool. Um, so do you feel one thing I would love to talk to you about is your your pro I don't know, your process. Not that you have a set process. And I love how you were saying how you and Don want to always challenge yourself to do new things. So you probably insert new things into your and things like that. But um I I think our processes kind of reflect our creative processes reflect like our thinking processes, and it might also reflect our hopes of how the world processes challenges. I don't know. I've been lately thinking about how the world is like a human going through processes and just cycling through um issues and things like that. But anyway, like what you were saying, it's soul feeding. So how would you like the life cycle of a butterfly? Like, would you have you recognized different stages of your creative process and how that reflects how activism is part of that process? I'm wanting to be like an artist activist with my music. I mean, I can't imagine not like it. That is a big part of my even though my music came to me, it's not a I don't know, like super activisty way. I definitely want to y always marry what creatively I'm doing with activism, um, as a part of my process. Like I and sometimes a song just comes into my head, or sometimes I intentionally want to like sometimes like create something. Anyway, stages of your creative process have you throughout the years you have created a formula that you just don't stray from?
no, I mean, just listening to you talk about it, I think that um, a lot of activist organizing and a lot of ways in which we come together is very uh, like a potluck. you know, and it's people powered. It's anarchistic often in our organizing, and um, we all bring different kinds of offerings of what our skills and um, our excitements are, and
Ah,
that's often how those things come together. I mean, it's kind of different when you have a gigantic organization, but often just there's a lot of ways in which we contribute, and because
mm,
I've seen the joy and um, power of big puppets and human figures and images of the natural world and banners and how lovely and effective they can be. That's what I'd like to bring. But everybody brings something different. Some people are great organizers. Some people lead beautiful songs. Um, some people, we all are come up with creative um, projects that people can contribute to.
mm,
Um, so I think there's lots of different ways to help each other and to inspire each other, whether it's being a musician, an artist, an organizer of people, um, somebody who puts on fabulous costumes or characters or does beautifully creative direct actions. We all have our talents and skills that we can bring. Um,
mm,
and, when I worked with Art and Revolution in San Francisco, it was a lot about creating simple images or elaborate images that you can pack into a pickup truck and then assemble on the site of the thing and have a lot of them have words that um, accompany the images or the figures so that when someone takes a photo of us you can say very clearly, oh, this is what they're doing here. They're not just like a weird art group, but they have clear messaging. And that was a strategy that Art and Revolution used. Whereas working with Bread and Puppet Theater, it's much more about the mysterious obscureness of art and how that hits you in a visceral way. And you don't necessarily know what it's about unless you kind of look in and become inquisitive.
mm,
And that has a beautiful power to it as well. Um,
mm,
and learning from those different, you could imagine, like you were talking about, as like a butterfly going through stages of life. Um, there's the power of theater, of creating things where people come to see a show that you've carefully crafted over a long period of time that we've done for decades. But then there's also taking those art images and using music and bringing it out into the street. And then you have street theater, which is potentially a way of intervening on everyday life and surprising people. Um, so using a lot of the techniques of theater, but using it in um, a surprising format where then sometimes the place, the location, the people that show up, the thing that you're protesting, the police all become part of the theater, um, because it's real life as theater. Here we go. What
yeah,
do you do with your body? What happens when the police come to tell your democracy puppet that it needs to leave? Um,
mm,
it changes the context that way. Um, what do you as a person contribute when you're wearing a costume of a possum? And now you have possums that are coming to try to stop a pipeline versus just humans that are, can be put into the box of protester. Um,
mm. Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I, uh, that's one thing as a member or as part of a parade, which I've been part of with my family, and even before I had kids, meeting you all. at UNC, Chapel Hill, around the World Trade Organization protests and International Monetary Fund protests, which were, these huge federal agencies that seem to drive a lot of poor indigenous communities off the cliff with um, their kind of austerity programs and kind of sweatshop labor, hopefully. It's improved since the 90s. Yeah, um, what I've seen is, yeah, it's not totally improved, but I uh I feel that it's the puppets can be confronting in a way that is deep and um and for people who don't see puppets regularly, it can be confronting in such a novel way that can help just from that novelty of it make people think in a new way. But yes, can really be so stirring. Like you said, um, a possum is, a certain size. They can be as big as your cat, I guess, but or smaller. But when you make them such a mess, hi. But when you amplify it, magnify it to such a majestic level, it can really be in your face. Look at this sentient being, feel the connection. It almost feels like astral, how you have the levels that you're trying to make human beings see these smaller creatures become so much bigger than their human scale, and it can just really inform, like, almost philosophically, just that experience of being able to see really, really huge, like the whiskers, the eyes, the ears, versus when at normal scale you might just never appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's
There's a
beautiful.
there's a beauty in trying to bring to life uh, other creatures that may not be able to have a voice or speak for themselves to um, the act of doing that, of like crafting it with your hands. It's a very human activity. But it's also, you know, I think that we as people, we long to have those connections with animals, with plants, with the earth itself and the weather systems that move around us, the universe. We want to feel connected to those things,
Mhm.
and by creating um, things that come to life that represent those, it can be a very powerful experience for people.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
I wanted to mention too, just in terms of that, I was thinking about the evolution and process of things. Is
Mm.
um, I just turned 50 this year and have had a little freak out of like, whoa, what does this mean for me? And this little
That's
crypt.
me.
What's that?
That's me in 4 years.
All right, all right, you're getting there.
Yep.
um, but thinking about the different mentors that I've had in my life, um, they're all getting older or have passed away,
Mm.
and how back when I was a 18-year-old going to help out with Food Not Bombs in Boston, I was working with Eric Weinberger, who was this elfin sort of long bearded guy who'd been getting arrested every year or multiple times a year since the 1960s for different causes that he wanted to protest. And that was the legacy and the language that he passed on to me, because he was just doing it. And it was sort of a sleepy time in like the 1990 or whatever it was, in some ways. But then, when the Iraq War started, I was
Mhm.
already steeped in um, that history, or that that lineage kind of that he had learned as part of the Freedom Summer down in the South,
Wow.
riding on the buses, and
Yeah.
he was able to, just with the regular activities that we're doing, he was able to pass on his knowledge of what he had done just by being present and doing it every day. Showing up every week to make a meal for people in public to highlight the fact that people needed to be fed and needed housing when we were doing homes not jails. And sometimes as an activist, I feel like you don't know exactly why you're doing what you're doing.
Mhm.
And sometimes you go to an event or you help out with an event and maybe five people show up and you're kind of disheartened. But
Mm.
the idea of being a person who's ready is one that's been resonating with me a lot of like, well, I'm just
Mm.
here and I keep doing my thing. And younger folks who get excited and jazzed by it will then be able to pass that on. And, I went to visit Bread and Puppet Theater finally, because we're always busy in the summer, so I don't usually get to, but I went this fall.
Oh gosh, how long had it been?
I don't know, decades. I mean, I've seen a lot of them over the years when they've toured and come here, but not hadn't been up there for a long time. And, much has stayed the same and much has changed. And, a few years ago, Elke Schumann, one of the founders, died,
Mm.
and Peter is getting older. But I went to go see them with my family as a kid and learned the inspiration from them. Um, and so they, of course, learned from other people and continued to pass on those traditions
Wow.
and make
Oh,
it their own.
so when you were young, you were in the audience of their shows.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep. Yeah,
that's
they
amazing.
used to have these really big shows where, 20,000 people would come and camp in the fields of the farmers around the theater. And we would go walking, and it was a sort of a counterculture happening up in
Yes.
New England, and we would see the shows that they were making, the alternative news that they were showing, um,
Mhm.
and learn from these paper mache gods and goddesses, different ways of thinking about the world, um, and
Amazing.
take that home. And then when I was in my 20s, I was kind of like, how what do I want? What kind of person do I want to be? What kind of artist do I want to be?
That's that's so important to ask, especially in that kind of launchy time of the 20s. What kind of person do I want to be? I think so
Yeah.
many people think that's an important question to guide you.
Yeah, I mean, in our early 20s, I think that's a lot of the work that we try to do is we kind of mess up a lot and
Mhm.
figure out what am I really truly interested in doing and being. And um
Yeah.
the the model for being an artist, it's kind of like I don't really want to be the kind of person who sits as a solitary artist inventing things that nobody's ever seen before,
Mm.
and then having shows in galleries and then trying to sell those pieces of art. It's like, no.
Yeah.
That's not interesting to me.
Huh. I I mean I think it's so beautiful, and one thing that you talked about with, making these animals on a huge scale. One thing that resonates with me with that, I have a passion for early childhood education, and my background is, peace education with Montessori, a wonderful, a huge peace advocate herself, Maria Montessori, um, and um, you know, the pedagogy isn't perfect, but in general, the message is that of the cosmic education is to show how we're all interconnected and we want to work towards piece and she talks about how children are the remakers of humankind. Like, I feel like small humans, much like maybe smaller animals, can still can be overlooked in terms of the power that they offer humanity and our cycles of evolution. And so I find myself a lot of times, if I could make a huge, if we could have huge puppets of little faces, of little, infants, toddlers, 3 to 6 year olds, that magical time. It's
Yep.
I that could really, I mean, yeah, I for me, I have felt so much magic working with children of that age. And one thing that also, when you were talking about theater, I don't know if you know, but we have a transgender daughter, and I
Mhm.
was just reading a New York Times article about there's a school in Texas that canceled a show put on by the school theater group, um, because they had cast a transgender student in a lead role. And it so I mean, I grew up doing theater. I love musical theater and drama. I was in like the forensics club, like my parents, my mom, we were like musical theater nerds. I grew up singing basically and also doing theater. But to me, I'm like, even in theater, in these creative spaces, they want to
Yeah.
censor.
Yeah.
Have you experienced entities trying? I mean, I know the police and the civil disobedience, that's part of also kind of your theater in general, but I'm happy that these communities, they are resisting, they're fighting back. And I think, if I remember from the article, things are going to be changing in that town in Texas around that, but slowly. Does any of that bring bring up memories or current situations for your theater and your expressions, and being having to confront these entities that are almost banning expression?
Yeah. I mean, it's challenging. I think whenever you're working with public institutions too, people take a lot of kind of like ownership and put a lot of restrictions on you. And we have experienced some of that, but part of our goal is to really
Mm.
do our own thing and not be under the auspices of somebody else's um, you know, decision making power over us. It's
But
challenging.
you go into schools and do workshops.
We do, yeah, we do go into schools and do residencies and workshops. And yeah, I mean, you're pretty safe as long as you're making animals and trees. um,
Well,
for
yeah,
with
that's
kids,
another, yeah, another way to get in there,
yeah,
um, because
it is.
yeah, we need to get in there. Um, but yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, I was thinking about going to my daughter's Montessori school as a
Oh,
visiting. Uh, we built puppets with them last year, but as a visiting person, talking about, I think they have a series of people who, parents and stuff, who come in and talk about their challenges that they've overcome over the years. And I was thinking, well, what if I came in and talked about, all the times that I've been arrested working on a different kind of cause, and would that fly? Maybe it would. Um, but yeah, certain schools have uh, their own kind of boundaries about what they feel comfortable um, presenting. I know we got in trouble before presenting a sitting president in a negative light, um, and you know,
where?
a lot of big institutions, like when we do our summer shows, a lot of big institutions, they have more, um, angst and fear around those kind of things because they've got all these funders that they're responsible to, and things like that. Um,
Yeah.
so, I mean, I think that has often always steered me towards uh, working independently, not being tied to,
Hmm.
somebody else's money to be able to do the work that I do.
Yeah. Well, I think it all can inform, because we need that informed kind of injections into these public realms. I mean, and so I'm glad for the kind of public private. There's still, hopefully it's not, there's still going to be kind of osmosis that needs to bleed in in because there are kids in there that need
Yeah,
it.
for
Uh,
sure, for sure.
yeah, definitely. And yeah, absolutely. I think it's, but yeah, we've been homeschooling, we've been world schooling. We like to travel uh and then I, wasn't totally feeling the current environment for my daughter, but I know that there are amazing parents that navigated their education, journeys well with affirming administrations and teachers. You can't, but you can't do anything about the parents. It can
Right.
be really painful, but yeah, it's all needed. It's all needed. Um, anyway, I wanted to, it's really cool when you're talking about it being people powered. And throughout, just, I know we're getting towards that. I mean, I could talk to you forever, but like, there are all kinds of people. And how would you, uh, how do you find a good, warm, affirming, welcoming, how have you crafted with Paperhand Puppet Intervention a space where people of all different ethnicities, genders, gender identities, historically oppressed communities, uh, how have you found how to create a space where those voices can shine? And with your last summer show in collaboration with Pierce Freelon and his mom, Grammy nominated singer, storyteller, African American, um, traditions and norms and belief systems coming through in the show. It felt really like, wow, Jan and Dawn, they really are people powered. How's the process in when you say people come together and we have conversations with all these different identities coming together? How would you characterize the environment and kind of spirit that you cultivate in order for those to
Well,
be
yeah. I mean, part of what we're doing is telling stories about what's going on in the world, and we can only tell our own limited worldview. Um, so working with other people and collaborating with them is the best way to authentically be able to tell other points of view. Um, and it takes um, it takes work and friendship, like
Mhm,
meeting with folks, talking with them, learning to understand the kind of art that each other makes, um, and and also having a kind of humility,
mhm,
where it's supporting rather than necessarily highlighting yourselves. Um, as as a creator in Paperhand, I mean, as any kind of artist, you have to be a little bit um, ambitious. You know, you have to be a little bit sort of like, I want to do this. I want to paint it like this. I want to make this story. Because if you don't go very far. You don't like make much. You have to like want to try things. You have to be excited. Um, but to be able to take some of that energy and put it to the side and say, I really want to help make the story that you have to tell beautiful. I want to be able to help create puppets that highlight the things that you find fascinating and necessary to tell. Um,
Even
and
if you don't understand why, maybe.
what's that?
Even if you don't understand totally why they want to highlight this or that.
Yeah, I mean that's the beauty of collaboration is being like, wow, I never would have thought of that
Yeah.
as being a response to something that somebody's doing, or I never would have sung it like that, or I never would have known that story. One of the things we did this summer, which is one of my favorite techniques, is to just take personal stories from our cast,
Yeah.
and even if somebody in the audience hasn't heard or doesn't have the exact same experience as you, they can listen to your story, and if it feels authentic, they can very often find connections in their own lives. So it feels like, oh, this is real. This is actually happening. So um,
Mm. Yeah.
by by being able to tell, uh, our own personal stories, it's a way of reaching
Mhm.
different audience members and being like, oh, I feel that too. I feel that also. And as white people, like when we're making puppets that
Mhm.
represent other types of people, we've stumbled over that for over the years, and we're still learning, but coming to a process where we're inviting artists of
Mhm.
color to come in and either work with us in our build or advise us in anything that we're making, so that it feels right and feels real, um, and doesn't make the kind of missteps that you can easily do if you're trying to represent somebody who's not yourself.
Yeah.
Um, so that's
Yeah.
exciting and it's great.
Yeah. Because there are gifts that we all have to give each other. And without a certain kind of flow channel we have from our spirits, we don't receive the gifts. You just don't, And I love how you're saying humility. Like, um, a very wise friend of mine was, we were kind of toying with the word cultural competence, and could it be more like cultural humility, where it's more like, yeah, you just open the flow of curiosity. It's okay if you don't know something and you don't maybe understand it right away, but eventually you'll do, like being comfortable with that process, um, and being excited about the gifts that people can bring, who they just have different experiences that have roots in different geographies, different animals around them, different plants, the humans, how they evolved in different. I mean, I kind of just grew up straddling different continents because of my multiracial background, Filipino American with Norwegian in there. Where, and I think that's more and more the story of human beings. We're just all, yeah, are all kind of wanting to be receiving the gifts that all, like, a heritage gives us. And when you were talking about um creating puppets that look like different people. Like, one thing that Asian women, and maybe men as well, not all, but there are surgeries in Asia to change our eye shape to look more Western. There, in a lot of like Hollywood casting of movies, they say, yes, we're looking for an Asian, but with no eye, what do they call it? Lid, like lid thing, you know? And I just imagine like, let's friggin' make a huge ass puppet with the eye, Asian eye, like in people, make it beautiful. I mean, it is beautiful, but you know, just to like reclaim that's nothing to be, I don't know, threatened of or afraid of, or like confronted by. It's just an eye shape, you know?
Yeah.
It's so, yeah, like the way that you can, and I don't know if you've ever seen, I saw some huge puppets, like huge ones made in a video. I saw it in a video in Brazil. Um, Maybe it was part of Carnival, but they just made huge, huge faces, like hundreds uh feet in length and of indigenous people. Their faces, their face painting, their face piercing with the different thorns of different plant, you know,
Yeah.
their hair just straight huge and it felt like it was a way because it's been so denigrated since colonial times. And
Yep.
through these puppets of just these faces that are huge and beautiful, and the eyes have so much soul in them. It's just another way of let's not be threatened by faces anymore. Like and flip the friggin' script. So I think yeah, just these huge puppets can flip people's thinking without having to read some academic paper or news article or whatever, you know what I mean? Or listen to people say, no, that's not nice, not like my eyelids and make me feel like I have to have surgery. You know what I mean? Like, no. Yeah, I just applaud you guys and what you do, and it can just be so transformative. Like with peace education, it's about, you know, how can we with all these different media help folks in their transformation of toxic beliefs into getting back into healthy, you know, like we're saying, um, looking at nature, but getting back to a healthy, natural, just a biodiverse way of thinking. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for yeah contributing to that because it's so needed, so needed. Again now, like I was just talking to my husband Dennis, who you know, you just cannot believe it that it's this vitriol is just it's still there, you know. It's come back. It was a bit dormant for us. Not of course not everywhere, but it's just crazy. And so it's your work is just constantly needed. So,
Thank you. I mean, we're all just trying and
yeah,
continue to show up and um,
and to show up.
be, be ready. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, it is it's just kind of like you we do what we do, we believe in it, we have our communities, and we just, you know, hope that the change is coming. And you can see, like you say, you see it and how people react to your puppets, that something, you know, it feels good. And as an artist myself, when people come up to me and like it's so humbling, you know, grown men in tears, you know, because your music touches I you know touches them. It's just like, oh, something's happening. I want to keep, yeah, just we just need to show up daily and keep going and keep going. I love that.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, any last message you want to you want to put out there into the universe, from you, from Paperhand Puppet Intervention, of what you hope for the world?
Um, well, I think what you were saying about, um, you know, being discouraged by the some of the times and things that people are saying and the repeating cycles of hate and violence that we're seeing, um, it's hard to keep going and it's hard to feel like you're making any kind of a difference. But I think that showing up and being ready, being present, um, and continuing to support each other is a good way to be. Um,
Mhm.
you know, not showing up is soul crushing.
Yes.
um, so I think just being with one another and um, continuing to create the world and the communities that we want to see.
Mm, absolutely. Uh,
Yeah.
fabulous. Where can our viewers find you and follow you, keep track, and come to all the things?
Oh, well, you can look up Paperhand, all one word, and
Mhm.
find us in various different virtual places. Um, and yeah, come to see some of our shows, get on our mailing list, do that kind of a thing. Um, and um, we have a studio out in Saxapahaw, North Carolina. In the summertime, we have volunteer days where people can build puppets with us. Um, and we continue to teach workshops and go around helping groups that need art to be part of their thing. Um, so contact us and we can do that together.
That's wonderful. And I will include all the links in the description box below. And yes, join their mailing list, join. It is a magical way to just stay connected to the artery of change. Get your blood flowing with theirs. It's just, yeah, fabulous. All
The
right. Well, I hope
artery.
you. Is there a cat wanting to say goodbye?
Oh, Pippin, what do you have to say? Yeah.
Meow, meow.
She's good. She knows her key.
Well, I want to bring my family out to some of the volunteer days. We'll get on that. And thank you so much, Jan, for
So
joining
good.
me today.
So good to chat with you, Christine.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll talk with you soon, I'm sure.
Okay. Love to you and your family.
Okay. You
Bye.
too. Love to you all. Hug. Bye.
Bye.